Good morning. Welcome to day 2 of the Back to School workshop. I'm Melisa Ferguson. I'm a curriculum manager at Voces Digital, and we're going to be talking about grammar-based texts for French. So we've got 3 that we have at Voces Digital. We're going to take a close look into all 3 of those to give you an idea as to what we offer, and so you can make a decision as to which one works best for you. So what we're going to be doing today, first of all, on our agenda is we're going to look at all 3 of our grammar-based French titles. For each one of these, you're going to get an overview of the chapter or unit structure for each one. We're going to look at some of the resources that are provided for you for teaching. And then we're going to look at some special features that make each one of these titles unique. Each one brings something else to the table that none of the other ones have. And then we're going to look at some features that Voces Digital has just in general that makes your life easier as a teacher. So getting started, we have our 3 titles. We have Introductory French, and then French 1 and 2. French 1 and 2 are very similar to one another. There are high school titles. Introductory French is a little different. It's a kind of a title unto itself. So we'll start with our Introductory French. It's a middle school title, best for about grades 5 to 8, and it's good for exploratory classes. So like in my area, there are a lot of schools that are having students take like their first year world language credit in middle school. This wouldn't be good for that because it's more exploratory and doesn't get into what would be typically a French 1 curriculum. It's focused on some thematic vocabulary in a conversational way to get students talking about themselves. So there's very limited grammar. It's mostly just first and second person communication. Do you like this? Yes, I do. What's your family like? My family is whatever. So very first and second, just to have students having very short, very personal conversations with one another. And then, of course, there's an overview of French-speaking culture worldwide. So not just France itself, but everywhere that French is spoken, students are going to be exposed to that and get an idea of what French-speaking life is all over the world. So the chapter structure in Introductory French, I like to think of it as like having 3 different phases. You've got your content phase, your application phase, and then your analysis and assessment. So the content, which is in pink, that's going to be where students are learning like the basics. So you've got your introduction, your vocabulary, a video, some examples, and your cultural note will be your content. After that, students are going to go into application, which is just taking what they saw in the content and practicing it to get more skilled with it. So you're going to have some like let's talk activities, actual like assignment activities. They're going to look at a panorama. And then we have these awesome French with Mr. Innes videos that they'll be seeing as well. After they've worked with the content, then they're going to jump into some analysis and assessment. This is where they're using things in a more like critical thinking kind of way. And then, of course, having their final assessment so that you can see whether they've mastered the content. So looking at the content, we have, first of all, an introduction. This just gives students a very simple explanation of what language they're going to be using in this particular unit. So like this one, you can see that they have an overview of dates and days. And it's very simple, very nicely organized, perfect for students in that age level to read. Then we get into our vocabulary, and it's just, we chose the most useful vocabulary for that topic because, of course, there are tons of words that we could have included. We just chose the ones that students would most want to talk about. And then you've got your native speaker audio. So where it's got this little headphone looking icon, if you click on that, I can't hear because it's a screenshot. When you click on that, students are going to hear native speakers say the words. And I mentioned this a lot that when I was teaching, not with French, I was a Spanish teacher, my students really enjoyed hearing that native speaker audio, and I wouldn't even have to ask them to repeat it. They would just automatically say it because it just sounded so cool to them to actually hear a native speaker and not their teacher who doesn't sound as cool as they do. After the vocab, we've got a video that puts everything together. So it's modeling this language with images that really bring it to life and help students see what it's talking about. So you can see a couple of these here. These are voiced over, and just shows examples of how to use the language. Then we get into some actual examples. So little situational conversations that use the vocabulary, use the introduction in a way that makes sense and that students could imitate for themselves. Each one has right here a little bit of audio to go along with it, again, by native speakers. And then they have the actual text itself so that they can read along with it and get like matching up what it sounds like with what it actually looks like on paper. And then these blue words right here, if this was an actual live page and not a screenshot, if I were to hover over that, it would translate it into English so that students can see, okay, those aren't words that I know, but I can understand them because there's a translation right here. The next part of like the introduction or the context phase is a cultural note. So this is like the main culture that goes along with the topic of the unit that students are going to look at. It's written in English. It's got a can-do statement so students understand like, why am I learning this? What's this important for? So they got their can-do, read about it in English, and then of course some beautiful illustrations not illustrations, but images to go along with it and help bring it to life so that students can see like, this isn't just something I read about a class, this is people's actual lives and this is how they live. After that, students are going to go into the application phase where they're actually practicing the content that they just learned. So we've got our Let's Talk activities. These are always denoted with a blue border around them. And there's a can-do statement so students can understand like, this is the kind of conversation I'm supposed to be able to have. Here's what I can do with this new language that I just learned. And these are really fun. It gets students talking to each other, using the language to express themselves. And it's very, getting the students collaborating with one another. You can get students up walking around, switching partners, things like that. This can be a very active phase of your class. After they've talked, they can jump into some activities, and every unit in Introductory French has 10 activities that reinforce what students learn. And there's lots of different formats that these can take. We've got like fill in the blank, there are multiple choices, some are short answer, student recordings, just tons of things that you can have your students do to show that they're learning this, they're processing it, and to give them that practice to help them work towards mastery. And of course, these have their can-do statements again, so that students can see like, this is where I'm supposed to be heading, and am I here? Am I where I need to be? So lots of like getting students to think about and assess themselves as well along the way. Panoramas are really fun. So this is an interactive image, and you can see the controls here on a live page. Students can either use the controls or they can just like grab it with their mouse and like drag it and go around the picture. They can zoom in, things like that. They're really fun. And this prompts students to like, put yourself in this situation. Imagine you're standing right here in this, and what could you use the language for? What kind of conversations could you have? So there will be questions that follow it up in both English and French. So it'll ask like, what could you order from this? And, have you do it in French, things like that, to really put the students in that situation of, here you are, you're standing on the street, go ahead and use your French. After that, students are going to jump into like some analysis and assessment, and this is using things in a more critical way, not just rote practice, but like, can you really use the language now? So we've got our authentic resources, and these are real life text, images, and videos. And this is an example of an image that students could look at. And I just wanted to point out like how super easy this is to read. This is from our unit on animals, and you've got your images that go along with it. You've got cognates, just super easy to read to help students build that confidence of, look, I can take the French that I know, I can go out into the real world, into a real situation, and I can use this to do something new, like with this one, locating animals on a farm. So very fun for students to look at those and to get that confidence boost of, wow, I really do know this French now. We also have personal questions. These are simulated conversations. So this little bit of audio right here would be a native speaker asking a question, and then students are going to respond to that by hitting record and giving their response in French. So it's, as close as you can get to a real conversation, and you don't have to now take that time to have a conversation with every student, which can be a classroom management nightmare. You can have them record to themselves, and then you can grade this later when you have time, so that way you're actually spending time with your students as a whole and not pulling people out to have individual conversations. Then we have our 2 quizzes. These are like your formative assessments. So these are just 2 really quick things, mostly automatically graded. So students can go in there, do that, and it's like a big, quick checkup, like, am I ready to take the big test? Which is next. Our summative chapter test is usually around like 30 questions, and it's just the basics. Did you get what you were taught in this? And very simple, just, appropriate for that age level. Something special that we have in our introductory French is this video series, French with Mr. Innes. He is really fun. His videos have like this zany vibe to them. You can see that he makes, crazy facial expressions. He uses stuffed animals to like talk with him and stuff like that. I think it's perfect for that grade level. He changes his voice to make it goofy, just really, really good at keeping students' attention and using the French and showing them that it can be fun. We also follow those up with some activities that go along with them. So you can see those here. You could use those, you could not use those. It just depends on how much you want to go into depth with these videos. And again, they have their can-do statements as well. So these are reinforcing what students have already learned, just giving them some extra practice, a little bit of a review. All right, so that was introductory French. We're going to take a brain break in a quick second and look at some memes. But before we do, let's open it up. Do you have any questions about introductory French before I jump into French 1 and 2? You can unmute, you can put it in the chat, whatever works. Okay, Layla likes the videos. I'm assuming that's French with Mr. Innes. Yeah, those are really fun.
Is he American or is he French?
He is from the UK and he's living in France, Paris, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so if you've got something that you're gonna,
go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry. So if a student completes the introductory French course, are they ready to enter French 2 in high school, or do they need to go to French 1 in high school?
No, they would do French 1 in high school. This one's just introductory. Like, it gives them a strong backbone in French so that when they go into French 1, they're going to be even more successful, but it wouldn't take the place of French 1. All right, so before we jump into French 1 and 2, which is quite a lot, let's look at some French memes just for fun. So I was looking at these. I haven't taught French in quite some time, but let's just put in the chat, which one of these memes do you relate to the most? And maybe it's something that you've experienced yourself, or maybe something that is like an inside joke in your classes, things like that. And while you're typing or thinking about it, I'll share one of mine. The one that I can relate to the most is the silent letters one. I haven't taught French in a very long time, but this past year I was teaching Spanish and had a student who was teaching herself French just using Duolingo, but it's not, comprehensive enough or anything. So she'd always come to me with questions, and she'd say, have a question about conjugating or something like that. And she'd, have a word, and I'd have to point out to her, all right, so all of these letters right here, you don't actually say those. They're all silent. So it was really fun for her to bring those questions to me in class and like, wait, you don't say those? You really don't? No, you don't. French is a little different than Spanish. So if you want to, go ahead and put in the chat, like if there's one of these that, like relates to you or your students, facial positions. Yes, that's really funny. I love that. Silent letters. Yes. Okay, it seems like a lot of us are feeling the silent letters. Those ones are really fun. And that cat with the face, that's a really funny face. So, all right, awesome. So yeah, thanks for reflecting on those. Just a really quick brain break before we jump into our next one. So let's go ahead and do that. We've got our French 1 and 2. These are our high school curricula, and they're going to count as, your graduating requirements if your students have to get that in your area. These are really comprehensive. They've got full vocabulary, they've got full grammar, they're geared towards novice and intermediate proficiency. So French 1 is going to be your novice, French 2 will be your intermediate. The chapters are thematic and based on your proficiency. They've got the traditional model. So, you've got your grammar, your vocabulary, and these are super robust titles. You've got tons and tons of content, tons of resources, so much to work with these. So you're definitely getting a full year or more with each one of these curricula. So looking at the structure, these are quite a bit different than introductory French because they're so robust. So each chapter is going to start out, the students will see the scope and objectives. Then the chapter is going to divide, and you're going to have 3 or 4 chapter subsections. And the subsections are almost a chapter unto themselves within that chapter. So within each of these subsections, you've got your presentation of content, you've got a look at some culture, you've got some practice activities, your panorama, your authentic resources, interviews, your conversations, and a little quiz. And that's going to be repeated 3 or 4 times with each subtopic. And I've got an example here. This is from chapter 5 of French 1. So you can see this is just one subsection of the entire chapter. And there's so much for you to work with that you don't have to put a ton of planning time into it. We've got so much for you to use. After the students have worked through all of those subsections, then you can get into some videos, which we'll take a look at. You've got a chapter review, your IPA, your integrated performance assessment, and then you jump into your test. So let's go into that into a little bit more detail because there's a lot to break down here with these titles. So your chapter subsections are going to start out with your presentation of content. You've got your vocab list, you'll have your grammar, introductions, and just like in introductory French, you've got your audio, you've got the list here. So very easy for students to know what it is that they're supposed to learn. You jump into some culture after you've gone through the content, and then you can practice it. And this is just an example of some of the practices that we have over here. And you can expand each one, and there's lots that go underneath of it. So when it says the first practice, it's not just one practice exercise, but there's a whole bunch underneath of it. Some writing, some listening, some speaking. And we could expand all of these ones as well, if it weren't a screenshot, if it were a live page. And you would see different things that students can do with all of those different competencies. Can they write with this? Can they speak with this? How can they listen? Things like that. So it's very robust. It's very thorough, giving your students all the practice that they need. Still within the content of this chapter subsection, you're going to look at a panorama. I didn't give a picture of this one because we saw one with introductory French, and it's pretty much the same thing, just this beautiful picture taken from somewhere in the target culture that students can manipulate and pretend that they're actually in that area and interact as if they were actually standing there. I also didn't include any authentic resources because we saw some with introductory French, but it's the same thing. We've chosen videos, articles, sometimes podcasts or songs, things like that, infographics. And can students interact with those to show that they can understand real French for native speakers? New to these titles are interviews. So we've got people who recorded themselves talking about themselves using the exact same French that students are learning in the chapter, so that they can see, like, okay, here's a person talking about themselves. How do I relate to this person? Am I similar to this person? Am I different from this person? And just gives them a really cool perspective as like real people. Then you've got your situations where your students can talk. So we've got our recordings right here. So we'll give students some sort of a situation, like imagine you're in this situation. How well can you have a conversation, or how well can you discuss whatever it is? They'll hit record and you can grade that on your own time. Then the chapter subsection ends with its quiz, which is right here. And these are just quick little checkups to make sure that students are understanding what they're learning about. After that, these are after the subsections. We've got videos, and these just use the vocabulary and context. And these are really good for, again, it's a little different than the interviews, but it just puts everything together so that students can see it and hear people and put like faces to the cultures that they're learning about. Then you've got your IPA, or your integrated performance assessment. These are so comprehensive. They're built around an authentic task. So something that relates to the theme of the chapter. Students are going to be put in this situation. Hey, you have to do this. So let's get you there. Then they're going to have some communicative activities that's going to build them towards an ultimate goal. So first will be their interpretive. Like, you need to gather some information about this topic that you're working on. So here's another authentic resource, interpret it, get the information that you can out of it. So students are, checking how well can they comprehend this French that's actually for native speakers. Then there's an interpersonal. It could be like a simulated text conversation, or another simulated conversation between a recording of a native speaker and themselves. And they're just pretending to have a conversation with these prompts so that they're gaining more information and kind of exchanging ideas about this overarching topic related to their authentic task. Then comes their presentational. This is like putting everything together and synthesizing it. Can you take everything and can you give information now based on what you've learned and using the French that you have? So that's one way that you can assess students. And I think these are hugely popular. And if you don't have time for 2 assessments, or you want to give like an extra assessment for a differentiation or whatever the case may be, we also have our more traditional tests. So these are going to come in 3 parts. You've got your like more traditional, what you would think of like a pencil and paper test. These are going to be like just checking up, like, did you master the grammar? Did you master the vocab? Things like that. You have your speaking test, where students are going to be recording themselves again. And so you can, assess their speaking in a more formal way than just the practice things that they had done before. And then you've got your writing test, so that students can show on paper, but not on paper, writing out how well can they put everything together in French to show that they have learned all of this content from the chapter all together. So that's your test. Let's look at some special features that are in French 1 and 2. In French 1, we have, excuse me, we have a book, La Belle et la Bête, which is included. It's got beautiful illustrations, which I included right here. And then each chapter has activities that go along with it. You could use this as like an ongoing thing. Like maybe we work for a couple of weeks and then we read a chapter. We work for a couple more weeks, we read another chapter. So you can like divide it up like that. This could be like, okay, we've gotten through a couple of chapters. Let's take a break from working on chapters and just read a book for enjoyment for a little while. There's different ways that you can approach this. You could use it at the end of the year as like a celebration of, look at how awesome we are in French. We can now read a book together. It's up to you how you use that. French 1 also has some kinesthetic activities. So these are great for getting your students offline, because a lot of times administrators, they don't want your students just on the device nonstop. So we've got that built in for you as well. Plus, students are very social. They're in class all day long. They need to move. So these are great for them. It puts the vocabulary or grammar together with some sort of activity that gets them moving around, interacting with each other, and just makes things a lot more fun. So these are included in all of our French 1 chapters. And there's an example here of like having students line themselves up, first of all, without talking. You've probably seen something like this as like an icebreaker thing in meetings that you've gone to. But then when they're done, they're going to ask each other, when's your birthday? My birthday is whatever. So it's a really good way to just get students up and moving, using the French, getting to know each other, building community, all of those great things that we want to have happen in our classrooms. For French 2, we have these really awesome surveys that put the vocabulary together and get students talking about themselves. It's like a more of a practice kind of a thing. So like, all right, here's all these words that you learned. Let's apply it to you. Let's make this personal to you. So there's going to be a question and then some different choices that students can go through. After students have submitted it, if you're not familiar with our survey feature, there's going to be like right around here, there's going to be a pie chart that shows how students answered those questions. How many said this answer? How many said this answer? And that's a really great conversational piece after the students had talked or had responded online. You can project that on your whatever you're using, and you can ask, okay, how many students said this answer? Did more students say this answer or this one? How about you, individual student? What answer did you say, and why did you say that? So you can take this survey and not just have students fill it out, but you can make it like a focal point of your lesson and really get to know your students, get lots and lots of repetition of all of those things that they need to learn, and just make it fun, make it conversational, and make it all about your students, which is, what you want to do anyways. These are followed up with student talk. So after you've done the survey, and talk to the whole class. There's an activity, and we've got like 3 different types of activities that you can do with the students. They kind of cycle through, and you get students asking each other the same questions. So that way they're not just talking, they're not just responding to the computer, they're not just hearing the class discussion, but they're actually using this with each other and getting to know each other. Again, we're building community here with these, which is so important to do. And then we also have an exit ticket that follows these up so that students can evaluate themselves, like especially reflecting on that student talk. How well did you interact with your classmates? How well did you understand them? Think about something you learned about one of your classmates that you had no idea about. You know, just things to get students reflecting on their own learning and thinking about each other as people that are sharing this space together and could potentially become, you know, friends or something like that. So these are really fun to do as well. All right, so that's French 1 and 2. Before we get into like the major Voces digital features, let's open it up again if you've got questions or you want to go into the chat. I'm going to take a look at the chat right now and see if I missed anything. Feel free to unmute if you want to. I don't see anything in the chat right now, so I'll wait just a second if anybody wants to unmute. If not, we'll move on.
Was your exit ticket in English?
Some of it's in English, some of it's in French. It really just depends on like what the prompt is. And they're also customizable. So if you wanted to change them, you could as well. Yes, there is Notre Soir. That one's a CI title. We're just looking at the grammar ones here. But yes, we do have Notre Soir. And
I was just worried that it was discontinued or something.
No, absolutely not. No, that one is still going well.
Okay.
Thank you, Catherine. She just said that she's used French too. So if you have questions, you can type something directly to her. Yes, you do have access to all of the titles. So if you've been using one, but you'd like to check out another one, you can absolutely jump into that one. We can help you with how to set that up if you're not sure how. But yes, you have all of these. So you can jump, and I'm actually going to show you this in the next little bit here, that you can jump between titles to kind of pick and choose and customize things for yourself. For 1 and 3, for like French 1, French 3, 1 and 2. Yeah, so I would just do French 1 for your first year and then French 2. And actually French 1 sometimes can go a little further. Like if you use everything, it's going to take a little bit more than a year. So you can kind of like divide it up if you wanted to get the most out of it. It doesn't have to be like linear. Okay, we're going to do all of the French 1 title in the first year, all of French 2 in the next year. You can customize it and pick your own pace if you wanted to. Yeah, there's a lot of people that don't go through the text in 1 year because it's so robust. So yeah, definitely don't worry about that. And you do what's good for your students and what's good for you. I think there is a session on Notre Soir. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick and figure out when that is before I move on, since we have questions about that. I'll see if I can find it.
I think it's later today.
Let me see. Yes, it is. It's going to be with Aaron, and it's at 11 o'clock in the second breakout session. So that's coming. So if you're interested in teaching with CI, the Notre Soir one is going to be at 11 o'clock today. There is a whole schedule of these workshops. If you go to vocesdigital.com, our homepage, and you look on the right-hand side and it says back to school workshop. Let me see if I can maybe pull this over here instead. All right, so looking at that right here, this back to school workshop, if you click on that and then just scroll down a little bit, you have your schedule right here. So you can see here's Wednesday, here's us right now in ours. So you can take a look at that.
We can't see what you just shared.
Oh, it didn't show up? I am sorry.
No, we're still seeing your presentation.
Okay, let me jump out of that real quick and I'll just do it differently. Okay, so vocesdigital.com, this is our homepage. If you go here where you registered for it, but you don't just like click on it, if you go down a little bit, here's the schedule. So you can see there's yesterday's, here's today's. So then you can see at 11 o'clock, you've got your Notre Histoire 1 through 3, and Erin's going to be presenting on that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
This is
you're welcome.
amazing.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into Voces digital features. These aren't specific to our French text, but just bonus things that make your life so much easier as a teacher, regardless of which title that you're using. So we're going to take a look at the toolbar, our game center. I'm going to show you how to search for topics in the title that you're in and other titles. So that kind of comes back to you have every title and you can maximize all of those. I'm going to show you teacher notes so that you can see how you can use those to guide your teaching. And then we'll take a look at supporting documents so that you'll know where to find those. So starting out with a toolbar, sorry. This is at the top of when you log in, and there's so much different things. This is kind of a GIF. It's just going to cycle through over and over again. But I just wanted to show you all of the things that you have access to so that you know you've got so many great tools at your disposal to get you through everything that you need to do. Your grading, giving assignments, customizing the pages, all of that is there, as well as switching your titles and stuff like that. I wasn't all of the presentations yesterday. I don't remember if they presented on how to use the toolbar yesterday or if that's coming up, but we do have lots of resources that can show you that. It's a little bit beyond the scope of this presentation, but I wanted to make sure that you were aware that you have this here and that it's super useful to use. Within the toolbar, we do have the game center. So that is right here on the toolbar, the game center. And when you hover over that, click on it, it's going to give you all of these different games that you can play. Trivia night is really popular right now. They've been running some trivia night games during this conference already. So you might have already played it. You might have an idea of what trivia night is like. I actually used trivia night this past year on a last second thing because my students were on a field trip and they got home or they got back to school an hour earlier than they were supposed to. So I was told, hey, your students are on their way. So it's like, oh, what am I going to do? I have no lesson plan. So I just pulled up 1 second. My daughter's leaving for driver training and my dogs are barking because nobody can leave the house without a ruckus. Girls, hey. Okay. So yeah, my students absolutely love trivia night. We played one game and they asked, can we play more? So I had to go from the Spanish set to the French set because I didn't have time to make a set, but it was just so much fun and they loved it. We have You Decide. These are stories where it's like a choose your own adventure kind of a thing that you do as a whole class. So these are really fun because you read a situation and then you have to decide, what is my character going to do next? And you make that story together as a class. You've got some more of your typical vocabulary practice like match and roundup, flashcard challenge, and story shuffle is where students create a story of their own using some prompts that are given within the game manager. So these are really popular, super fun for students to do. And it's a great way to break things up. If you end early, if your students get back early like mine did, and you need a last second thing, pull up some trivia night. These are just really great things to either plan into your day or just bail out because you need something at the very last second. Our search feature, this is newly updated and I love the way that it's updated. So I gave you an example of this. I was in Introductory French and I said, okay, what if I wanted to have things specific to Senegal? So I typed in Senegal here, hit search, and what it brings up is the first set of things is that title itself. So the first set is what's in Introductory French. Underneath of that would be anywhere that Senegal is presented in any other title. So if I didn't see what I was looking for in the title I'm particularly in, or I wanted more, I could see there's some things in French 1, there's things in Notre Histoire, French 2. I could click on that and it would take me right to it so that I could customize what I was teaching and say, okay, now we're going to jump into this book. We're going to use this resource to supplement what we're working on. And you can search any type of topics. I just chose a country, but you could search specific vocabulary words. You could search cultural things, whatever it is that you want to do. You can search in there and get extra resources. And since you have access to all of these titles, you can jump back and forth and you can make this not just like a rigid, I have to just follow introductory French to the letter. I can pull things in and I can make this the course that I want it to be. So I love that search feature. I use it all the time. just jumping back and forth, like, where's something about this interesting thing? So that I love. We have teacher notes on lots of our pages. So these are ways to guide you in your teaching because you're super busy. You have 1.5 trillion things to do. So as much help as you can get, we know is always appreciated. So these are going to show you how to use the resources and give you some tips of how to succeed with those. You don't have to follow them by the letter. So if you look at a teacher note and you're like, I think I'd rather do something different, absolutely do, because this is your class, it's your curriculum. You want to make it your style. But if you're pressed for time or pressed for creativity, we've got these notes here that you can follow, and it makes things a lot easier for you. And maybe you use them for a while, and then, like, especially if you're a newer teacher, you use these for a bit, and then you start developing your own style, your own personality in the classroom, and then you start deviating from them a little bit. So they're like training wheels, but you don't need them. If you want to, you can use them. If you don't, absolutely don't. And then we have our supporting documents. So like I said, you need as much help as you can get because you are doing so many different things every single day. So we're here to help you out as much as possible. So we've got our Voces library, has all of these supporting documents in it. So you've got like your scope and sequence, your vocab list, pacing guides, rubrics, things like that. That's in the Voces library. And I'll actually jump out of here real quick and show you that as well. So that's at our website, Voces Digital. And if you go at the top, the Voces library. Looks like my internet's being a little bit slow. And then find the title that you're doing. They just updated this, so it's a little bit different, but let's see, we're French. So we want to find a French one. Let's just look at French 2. If you click on that, you're going to have all of your supporting documents right there. So you can take a look at those right on our website so that you can get all of that and have, this is great for if your administration wants like a scope and sequence of the year that they want submitted, you've got it. Just print it out, give it to them. If you want to customize it, absolutely go ahead. But this is like your basic idea. All right, so going out of here, back into my presentation. We also have some resources in the the resources section of your teachers panel that's on the toolbar. And I'll scroll up real quick and just show you where that's at. All right, so the teachers panel right here on your toolbar, that's where you're going to find the resources. It kind of looks like a locker when you click on that or hover over it. So we go into there and we've got lots of resources for you, things that you can print out for your students to use, like the KWL chart. You have comic strips, things like that. You can go into the video library and you can search for particular videos or like types of videos. If you want a video about family, you could go in there and search for one. And we have tutorials in there so that if you're like, oh, I'm not really sure how to do something, you can jump in there and you can find the tutorial that shows you how to do things. And then I just took, it's blurry because of, I just recorded a video, but I just wanted to show you like how robust a pacing guide is. So this is just the pacing guide for French 1, Chapter 1. And yeah, you can't read it, but you can see that we have got so much of this lesson broken down for you, pages and pages, day by day. Here's what you can do. Here's the goals that you're meeting. Here are the proficiency levels, the things like that. So it's very, very thought out. So that way you can just jump in and you can teach. So I apologize, it's blurry. I just wanted to show you like the depth of it and how full it is of ideas for you to use in your teaching. And that's, you can get that in the Voces library. So you can get a non-blurry version of this for yourself. And then I just wanted to really quickly tease that we do have another curriculum coming. This is going to be Voix du Monde, and we're going to have levels 1 and 2. We're actually working really hard. We're going to try to crank out both levels 1 and 2 for the next school year. So we're already underway on that. Catherine, who is in this, is working for me. She is already hard at work on some integrated performance assessments. She's going to be creating tons of this. So thank you, Catherine, in advance for all of your hard work. These are going to be an amazing curriculum. This is going to have each level. We'll have 11 chapters that are highlighting different French-speaking countries. These are going to be more streamlined than the French 1 and 2. So like I showed you how robust French 1 and 2 was, and we talked about how you're not going to get through it in a year, which is okay. It's totally okay. These ones are a little more streamlined. so that you could probably get through each one sequential in a year. And there aren't chapter subsections. So what you get in a chapter is a chapter, and you can just go through it sequentially and not broken down into subsections. There's going to be a ton of culture in these, like so many things. Some culture will be in English, some's going to be in the target language. We've got some stories written by Nina Holzfein. She wrote stories for Notre Soir, and she is incredibly good at what she's doing. She's already written one for me, and I'm so excited about how it is. It just turned out beautifully. And then we're going to have some brand new videos with French with Mr. Ennis. He is making some that are exclusive for Voces Digital. They're not on his YouTube page. I think he might add them later, but he's making them for us. So these are exclusive French with Mr. Ennis videos. These will be in level 1. And I just love his videos so much that I'm really excited to include even more of those that are just for Voces Digital. So that's going to be really exciting. And if you want to be a part of this fun, we are still looking for some freelancers. So if you are really creative and would really love to be a part of this, we are looking for some people to create the cultural resources. So if that's your jam, if you really love looking for authentic resources and stuff like that, if you really love writing in the target language, let me know. My email address is right there. I'm looking for people to do some things for authentic resources, cultural readings in English, and some embedded readings in French, and maybe some other things as well. So if you're creative, if you're looking for a little bit of extra stuff to do, please reach out, because I would love to have you on my team. So just a little plug for that. This one is going to be like offered as an alternative for French 1 and 2. So you'd have your choice. If you want a more streamlined course for your first and second year French students, you could use this one. You don't have to. You will still have access to French 1 and French 2. So if you've been here all along and you just love your French 1 class that you already, like you've added stuff to it or whatever, that will still be there for you. We're not taking it away from you. This is just an alternative that's a little more streamlined, a little more updated, feels fresh and new, that you can have. And of course, you can use your search feature and you can jump between the two if you wanted to incorporate different things that you wanted to. So yeah, if you want to join my team, or if you're just looking for something new, keep an eye out for this. It's going to be next fall. We should have that available for you. All right, so here's what we did. We looked at our 3 grammar-based titles for French. We have Introductory French, French 1, and French 2. We took a look at the chapters or unit structure for each, so you could see how students are introduced to that content, how they practice it, and how you're going to assess them. We looked at different resources that you use for teaching. We saw some special features like the French with Mr. Ennis videos, books, surveys, things like that can take you beyond just the content and have more fun with your students. And we looked at some Voces Digital features that are across the board that can help make your life easier as a teacher. So with that, if you're interested, your next step would be to check out the Voces library. Again, go to vocesdigital.com. Right up at the top, you've got your Voces library. You can find these in there, and you can find out more information just by clicking on each one of these individually. If you're already on Voces and have an account, we can help you with adding new titles to your account. So if you're teaching French 1, but you would like to try Introductory French as some supplemental stuff, or vice versa, we can help you out with getting that added into your account at no extra charge, because they're all included. If you're not currently a Voces user and you would like a free trial to check these out, up along the top of our home page, next to login, you've got free trial. It's orange until you click on it, then it becomes blue. And then you can request a free trial just by giving us your email address, and then we'll hook you up with that, and we can kind of walk you through, here's our titles, here's our platform, and here's how you can use it. So that's totally free to you to try out and see if you'd like to use it for the next school year. So if you have any questions about this particular presentation, or if you're interested in freelancing for our next French title, you can contact me, Melisa F at vocesdigital.com. If you have questions about Voces in general, like paying for a subscription, using the platform, troubleshooting, setting up your LMS, things like that, you can contact info at vocesdigital.com, and one of our team members will help you with that. And my last thing here is that we are going to be holding a CI Summit next year. It's going to be in Pennsylvania. I've heard that the school is absolutely beautiful. So if you want to learn more about CI teaching, ADI instruction, you can register for that. And then everybody will be really excited to see you next year in Pennsylvania. So